Bathrooms are located out the door to my left, women to the right, men's room is to the left. We allow 30 minutes for public speaking. If you have not done so, please sign up at the podium. Zoom speakers are only permitted if you signed up by emailing the city clerk by 11 a.m. today. If you did sign up, you must put your camera on so that we could see you before addressing the council. Please note that the council has rules of decorum for our meetings, including the public speaking portion. We ask that respect be shown to all, whether they serve on the council, on the staff, or are here as public members. As noted on the signage as you entered, we do not allow weapons of any sort, signs mounted on wood, metal, or similar material, or signs larger than 19 by 24. This will help guarantee that we follow the open meeting law. Not only are we here tonight to listen to the voices of the public, but we are also here to run government proceedings. To best serve us all, we cannot have any distractions. When a speaker is addressing the council, no disruptions are permitted. This includes talking over, yelling, and clapping. When this body proceeds with the day's business, we also need no disruptions. As per open meeting law, section 103, interruption of a speaker or government proceedings will not be tolerated. After one warning, anyone interrupting a speaker or the proceedings of tonight's meeting will be removed from chambers. I'm now calling this Common Council meeting to order at 7:43 p.m. on May 6, 2025. If you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. May I please have roll call?
Alderman Pasty,
Here.
Alderman Tierney,
Here.
Alderman Scott Childress,
Excused.
Alderman Edwards,
Present.
Alderman Mickens,
Present.
Alderman Dennison,
Here.
Alderman Andrews, Alderman Shabbat,
Here.
Alderman Hirsch.
Here.
We have a quorum. Can I have a motion to dispense with the minutes of the previous meeting and approve same? Motion by Steve Shabbat, second by Michelle Hirsch. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is adopted 8-0. Can I have a motion to dispense with the reading of the general bills? Can I have a motion to dispense? Motion by Drew Andrews, second by Jeannie Edwards. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is adopted 8-0. As council members, we get the pleasure to meet folks from throughout the city and from all walks of life. Throughout our service on the council, we meet community members who genuinely move us with their kindness and efforts to improve our community. Tonight, we recognize and honor a person who has gone above and beyond to serve and help others with the Common Council Community Award. We are delighted to present Rose Quinn with the award this month. She was selected by Alderwoman Michelle Hirsch, and at this time, I ask Rose to join Michelle at the podium.
Check. So this award for Rose was actually supposed to happen back in December, but everyone kept getting sick. So I'm glad that she's able to be here tonight. So Rose Quinn is a traffic safety advocate, educator, grant director, SUNY Ulster, community traffic safety education at SUNY Ulster, a communications manager with the New York Bicycling Coalition. She runs Safe Pass Ulster, advocates at the state and national level for safer streets and infrastructure with Families for Safe Streets. And I'm sure I'm leaving a lot of things off. Rose has come to the Common Council to teach us about Vision Zero, a global movement to end traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries by taking a systemic approach to road safety, and she was instrumental in educating the council on the benefits of lowering the speed limit to 25 miles per hour citywide. Rose is also one of the most resilient people that I know. Having lost her own partner in a roadway car versus bicycle crash and still shows up for this community and other families countywide who have lost a loved one to traffic violence. Rose raises money for the ghost bikes, make sure that they're taken care of. Rose is the one who the community turns to when they suffer a loss. This past winter, Rose helped produce a powerful short film, The Speed of Silence, about traffic violence, which can be viewed on YouTube and will be screened May 27th at the Denizen Theater in New Paltz. Rose is featured in the current May issue of Prevention magazine in the article Safe Travels. Rose is a dedicated, beloved community member who shows up for her community in many spaces on many issues, and it is an honor to present her with the Common Council Community Award.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Michelle, for your very kind, generous words. Thank you very much, Common Council, for your patience with me. And I'm going to start this by saying 3 minutes. Ha 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 ha. Ha. Sorry. Sorry. I want to just start really briefly because I'm going to just talk about a couple of really heavy things by kind of clearing the air. So we could all take a breath, and I'm just going to read this. And you can listen with your heart or with your mind, or both. In gladness and safety, may all beings be at ease, whether living beings they be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects her life, her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world. If you're inclined to clap, please don't. Just let that settle. Thank you. So I'm going to start, and I promise I won't be that much longer than 3 minutes, but I want to start by acknowledging some people who are not here with us today. Michelle, could you just hold that? Keith Spanky Jones, Justin Boyd, Daryl Savage, John Host Lynch, Devin Griffiths, Sarah Edwards, Christine Tarusco, Gary White, Donna Cristilio, Stephen Siluk, Monica Goods. Those are the names, or just some of the names, of the people we have lost in Kingston on our roads since 2016. There's a few more unnamed, and I apologize for them not being here. These names, these people are my inspiration and my heart. I would be remiss if I didn't take this moment to say thank you to the people who held me near and dear during what was the hardest time of my life to date. So thank you, my beautiful family, Layla, Anna, Mary, and Constance, for holding me. To my dearest community and friends and supporters and fellow advocates, to Tanya Garment, to Lisa Royer, to Ann Ames and Phil Erner, Ella Conrad, Andy Bicking, to my Rise Up family, to my mutual aid family, Abe Yucatel, Michelle Hirsch, my O Positive friends and family, my Love Boss family, my Safe Streets family. This award is for all of you, because without you, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you. I wouldn't have the strength, at the least, to be doing it. So thank you. You're my inspiration. And also to all of the activists sitting out here right now who I know are going to get up and speak about housing. There's one other person I want to thank, besides you guys, of course, and that's my landlord, believe it or not, because my landlord actually did not raise my rent to a ridiculous amount. So I'm here because I don't make a lot of money, okay? I do a lot of volunteer work and I don't make a lot of money. My landlord has not priced me out. So I do want to say thank you to my landlord. I also want to recognize my dearest friend, Matt, who is my mirror. But most of all, I want to recognize the person who's not here, John Host Lynch, my mentor, my teacher, my coach, my best friend, and my fellow revolutionary. You gave me the courage to be authentic. And look what happened. We slowed a whole city down for you. And we're going to keep going. So, in short, awards, accolades, all this stuff, none of this happens without a whole lot of people and community. And my Kingston community are beautiful people. And it breaks my heart when I have to move them out. So repeat after me if anyone wants to try. The revolution will not be motorized. Are you ready? The revolution will not be motorized. Thank you. When we talk about housing, when we talk about any of the human rights issues that are so important, we are also talking about transit. We are also talking about sidewalks. We are also talking about streets that people can bike on and walk on and that kids can walk to school on. And that is what I'm fighting for in Kingston. And I think that's a universal fight. I think it's a universal fight. And you guys have shown me that. So thank you very much. And thank you. And the fight continues.
We now enter into the public speaking portion of the meeting. We have allotted 30 minutes for this purpose. Speakers will have 3 minutes. Please be aware that I will give a verbal 30-second warning, as well as you will see the time on the clock. If there are remaining speakers after 30 minutes, I will call for a motion from the council to extend the period for another 30 minutes. Speakers, direct your comments to the chair, as council members cannot engage in debate during this time. Please state your name and address on the record before you begin. There could be no distractions from the audience in chambers or on Zoom when a speaker addresses the council. The Common Council has also received written comments for our consideration, and they could be found on the city's website under tonight's agenda. May I have the first speaker, please?
Lorraine Farina.
No, did you turn it off, Michelle?
Thanks. I don't hear well, but I'd like to be heard well. Okay, thank
We
you.
can now hear you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm the coordinator of Hudson Valley Air Quality Coalition, and I wanted to read a letter that was sent to Mayor Noble by members on March 7th and followed up again on April 15th, but has not received a response. We, the membership of Hudson Valley Air Quality Coalition and the undersigned Kingston residents, are writing about the multiple recent wildfires in the Hudson Valley: Greenwood Lake, Plattekill, Denning, Red Hook, to name a few. At the time, Ulster County was designated at the highest fire risk. There was a protracted drought, and there was dry leaf tinder all over the valley, as residents and towns had not collected all leaves for the season. Residents were warned that even the slightest spark from any source, such as a cigarette, could ignite a fire. On November 10th, the air quality in the Hudson Valley contained very unhealthy levels of fine particulate matter, extending as far north as Schenectady. Governor Hochul implemented a burn ban in mid-November that allowed backyard fire pits, contained campfires, and small cooking fires despite the high fire risk. This was irresponsible because humans cause nearly 90% of wildfires in the United States. Given these conditions, allowing backyard fire pits and contained campfires less than 3 feet in height and 4 feet in length, width, and diameter, and contained cooking fires is not just a bad idea. It jeopardizes the health, safety, lives, and homes and property of all who live in and around the city. According to Ulster County and other available information, many jurisdictions in Ulster County, in fact all except Kingston, enacted their own burn bans, many of them explicitly strict. But Kingston, the most densely populated city in the county, failed to do so. What we have learned from experts about the California wildfires, that fires in densely populated areas are much harder to steer and control, makes Kingston's lack of action particularly concerning. Even Steve Newhouse, the Orange County, New York executive who went to fight the California fires, named urban density as one of the most difficult factors. In addition, wood frame houses, which make up a large portion of both the Altadena and Kingston housing stock, are most at risk. And fire risk both here and there was at the highest possible level. Kingston was lucky to avoid catastrophe this time due to favorable winds, but climate-driven high wind conditions are becoming much more frequent here. In addition, the variety of other conditions that we share with California make future risks unacceptable. This letter demands
30
that you
seconds.
enact clear, explicit, and strict burn bans, prohibiting all outdoor burning, including backyard fire pits, contained campfires, and small cooking fires, in order to protect residents from future fire dangers and dangerous air pollution. Respectfully, Hudson Valley Air Quality Coalition members and the undersigned Kingston residents. Eli Duker, Robert Fanchel, Lorraine Farina, Orion Longo, Amy Lonhar Blauweiss, Judith Lewis Murnett, Billy Murnett, Katrine
Thank you.
Ogard
That's-
Jensen,
your time is
Steve
up.
Rice, and Anna Teixeira.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Robert Fanchel.
Robert, Robert Fanchel, 155 Highland Avenue, Kingston. As a member, as of the date of our follow-up letter of April 15th, fires had broken out in Brooklyn and on Long Island, and more fires have occurred in New York State since. Torrential rains notwithstanding, this area has been in abnormally dry status for the last year. Climate changes have caused extreme weather events such as wildfires to pop up at all times of the year. We strongly urge the Common Council to enact a law stating that when Kingston is in an elevated fire risk status, that a strict, explicit burn ban be in place as described in our letter. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Father Frank Alanga.
Father Frank, Alanya, pronounced like lasagna. Members of the Common Council, I am Rector Emeritus of Holy Cross Santa Cruz Church on Pine Grove Avenue, and also the current president of the Ulster Immigrant Defense Network. As a person of faith and conscience, I rise in strong support of the resolution backing the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act. This is not only a matter of public policy, it is a matter of moral urgency and spiritual integrity. From the heart of the Judeo-Christian tradition, we are commanded to love our neighbor, to welcome the stranger, and to ensure that the vulnerable, especially the poor, the widow, the orphan, and the outcast, are not cast aside, but lifted up. The Hebrew prophets thundered against those who build their houses by unrighteousness and praise the one who defends the cause of the poor and the needy. Jesus himself said that when we offer shelter to the least among us, we do it unto him. Housing is not a privilege for the lucky few. It is a human right. Without stable shelter, no person can thrive. Without deeply affordable housing, our neighbors are displaced, our communities are hollowed out, and the common good is betrayed. The Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act offers a bold and practical step towards justice. It gives us the tools we need to build and protect homes that working families, seniors, and struggling individuals can actually afford. It replaces speculation with stewardship and offers hope instead of hardship. If we are to live up to our highest civic and spiritual values, we must act. I urge you to vote in favor of this resolution, not just as lawmakers, but as leaders of conscience and moral fiber, answering the call to love mercy, do justice, and walk humbly with our God. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Howard Weiss.
Hi, everyone. My name is Howard Weiss, excuse me, and I live in Ward 9 on Brewster Street. As I've said here before, I'm a volunteer with For the Many's Tenant Hotline. I'm here tonight to urge you to support both the REST Act and the establishment of a statewide social housing development authority. These two measures would go a long way in addressing many of the dire situations faced by tenants calling the hotline. The Common Council has played a commendable leadership role in its pursuit of affordable housing legislation, and it's time, once again, for bold action. If these two measures you're voting on tonight were placed on a ballot for Kingston residents, there would be overwhelming majorities voting in support. We desperately need to expand rent stabilization to protect tenants not currently covered under ETPA. And the standards of what is affordable must be adjusted so that they are in sync with the income levels of workers living in Kingston. We should not have people calling a hotline because their 3 jobs are not enough to cover the rent and they see no way out. Establishing a statewide social housing development authority would be a powerful way to build and maintain affordable housing without the complications and conflicted purposes of private developers. So again, I urge you to vote in support of the REST Act and the Social Housing Development Authority. I also call on you to pass a resolution denying the attempts to deregulate Stony Run. Why take a step backward when we're trying to expand rent stabilization? Finally, I call on you to cancel the vacancy study scheduled for later this year to prevent landlords from manipulating the data and stripping Kingston of rent stabilization protections. Again, why take a step back? Let's move forward. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Sarah Sismanzia.
Hello, my name is Sarah Sismazia, and I live at 180 West Chestnut Street in Kingston. And I am very lucky to have Michelle Hirsch as my ward person. I urge the Common Council to pass resolutions in support of the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act and the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act. I'm extremely lucky to live in one of the very few ETPA apartment complexes in Kingston, though that will soon be up in the air due to the vacancy study that is due sometime at the end of this year. I'm very worried that with the vacancy study, as we have seen in Poughkeepsie and Newburgh, that landlords will continue to strike it down with endless lawsuits and plague our budget. The money that is spent on fighting the vacancy studies should be going to help people in Kingston, not on fattening the pockets of corporate landlords who don't even live in Kingston. Most of them live in New Jersey. I also believe that the social housing resolution will allow more people to come back and stay in Kingston. We have a great gentrification problem here in Kingston, and we're losing our culture, we're losing our people. And I know way too many people who are working 4 to 5 jobs who cannot afford rent, even in my ETPA protected building. It has gone on for too long, and we need to strengthen these protections. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Anthony Fitzpatrick.
Hi, I'm Anthony Fitzpatrick. I live on Doris Street in the town of Esopus. I can only speak for myself, but I want to speak in support of Resolution 79 and Resolution 80. And that's because there is a housing crisis, and the solution to the housing crisis is just as simple as the solution to the immigration crisis. It's got to be handled by everyone. It's got to be all hands on deck, and it's got to be everybody doing everything they possibly can. And with these resolutions, it just grows the tools available to you in your toolbox to tackle this crisis. When I was growing up, when I was a teenager, there's a couple years where I spent living with my friends in their apartment, living on a couch. And at the time, it never really occurred to me, but I was a homeless person. I was displaced. I had about as stable living as someone living out of a motel. I just want to remind everyone that this crisis is something that can come for anyone at any time, and it is one of the most serious things that a person can face in their lives. So I just wanted to come out tonight and speak in support for these revolutions, because I know you all are champions of this crisis, and that's all I got. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Teddy Artswager.
Good evening. I'm here to give comment on behalf of Assembly Member Sarahana Shrestha. I'm also a Ward 2 resident. Between 2020 and 2024, energy costs in New York increased by 30% and housing costs by almost 20%. But it's the housing cost that's behind inflation in our state being higher than the national average. If the state were to invest $5 billion in increasing the stock of high quality and permanently affordable homes for a wide range of incomes, its impact on lowering inflation would be significant and long lasting. Families would be able to focus on increasing their quality of life in aspects other than housing, or perhaps pay their debts quicker. They would be able to plan for their future, such as sending their children to college or making medical plans without having to worry about where they're going to live. And the people who work to power our economy would become members of a much more stable and healthy workforce. Right now, we already spend a substantial amount of public money on tax breaks and subsidies we give to private developers. But we know that even if they held their end of the bargain and built a lot of homes, not enough of them would be affordable, and not enough of them would be for our constituents who are getting displaced. The primary purpose of those homes would still be profits and not permanent affordability. With the Permanently Affordable Homes for New Yorkers Act, we would create a public developer that can build or rehabilitate desirable homes in places like the city of Kingston, where no matter how much you make, the quality of your unit will be the same as others, and you won't pay more than 25% of your income. Additionally, we also want to stop rampant price gouging on the housing market that already exists. To that end, I have introduced the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act so that upstate localities like ours are empowered to declare a housing emergency and exercise more control over how they would like to opt into the state's rent stabilization laws and what type of buildings they would like to cover. I thank the Kingston Common Council for considering a vote in passing a resolution to support these two state bills, and I urge you to vote yes so that we can take the voice of our community to the halls of Albany. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Kieran Cahouse.
My name is Kieran Kowalix, and I'm a resident of Kingston on Teachin Avenue, as well as a social worker doing homeless outreach in Ulster County. I'm here once again to urge you to support the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act and the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act. I have been consistently advocating for this legislation since these resolutions were introduced in Common Council last month. And in so doing, I have had many conversations with members of our community, your constituents, about their experiences with housing in Kingston. I have spoken with people who are paying the majority of their monthly income to remain housed, people who are considering leaving Kingston altogether because of the cost of housing, and people whose worldly possessions can fit in a few reusable grocery bags, and who live in an unrelenting state of uncertainty about where they will lay their heads at night. So when people ask, who would aspire to live in social housing, a question dripping with the implication that this housing is somehow undesirable or undignified, I truly believe that the answer is abundantly simple. There is nothing undesirable about a rent-burdened tenant having access to quality housing that costs 25% of their monthly income. There is nothing undignified about a homeless individual making $900 a month through Social Security, having an opportunity to sleep in a bed and cook in a kitchen, rather than sleeping on a bench or cobbling together meals using only the microwave and mini fridge in a motel room. Social housing is for everyone because everyone deserves to have a beautiful, affordable home here in Kingston, and because housing should be a right, not a privilege that can be revoked to line the pockets of landlords and developers. Housing instability is a pervasive, systemic issue, and it will not be solved by landlords knowing their tenants by name, especially when those names are only ever used on notices of rent increase or eviction. Please pass the resolutions in support of the PASH NY and REST Acts to take a meaningful step towards alleviating the pain that is being acutely felt by countless members of our community. And please eliminate the vacancy study. I already get paid to witness the housing crisis firsthand for at least 40 hours a week. And I'll tell you for free that it is an undeniable reality and that your support of these resolutions is desperately needed.
30 seconds. Next speaker, please.
Brandon Estenis.
Hello, I'm Brandon Estenis. I'm a resident of Ward 5, and I'm an economist, and my work focuses on the housing crisis. So I'm here to talk about the Social Housing Development Authority, the public permanently affordable housing, social housing for New Yorkers Act, and REST. So the story of why housing prices rose so much in the wake of the pandemic is a complex one. but I think it maybe captures the important features of it to say this. There was a sudden migration of people with city level incomes out of the cities, and there was no slack in the housing stock to absorb them without displacing people. And then once the housing prices have this momentum upward, they tend to ride that momentum with a little bit of speculation, and rents get ratcheted up in order to validate those prices. So all of that can only happen when you have a supply shortage. We need a healthy ecosystem of people building for the future, building for our children, building for those that migrate here, building for ecologically sustainable, walkable, bikeable neighborhoods, building for deep affordability, and building for those who are presently homeless. A public developer is a critical part of that ecosystem. A public developer fills market niches that the private market simply will not fill. A public developer can also be a counter-cyclical force, which is to say it can build through recessions, ensuring that we have enough places to live by the time the next boom arrives. So the Social Housing Development Authority can play a critical role in making Kingston more affordable, livable, and beautiful. I therefore urge you to pass the memorializing resolution in favor of the permanently affordable social housing for New Yorkers Act. Regarding the REST Act, I want to say running an ad hoc vacancy study in order to establish whether there is a housing emergency is a strange, inefficient, and politically temperamental approach, as we've all discovered. We should support moves toward more coherent and data-driven rent stabilization policy. Abolishing the vacancy study is a move in the right direction. I therefore encourage you to support the memorializing resolution in favor of the REST Act. Thank you all.
Next speaker, please.
Marissa Marvelli.
Hello, Marissa, 60 Noon Lane. I am actually here as a candidate for Ward 3 Common Council. And I'm also here as a housing provider, equitable housing provider, a role I serve with my husband. We manage 5 apartments nearby here on Broadway, and we understand the great responsibility that comes with that we treat our tenants fairly, and that we want them to feel at home, and that in exchange, we value that they treat our units as home. So I'm here today to voice my strong support for the REST Act and for the creation of social housing, permanent social housing for Kingston. I've been really proud of the progress we've made as a city, and that we're being at the forefront of the housing crisis, and not to slow down now. Let's keep going. Specifically with regard to the REST Act, I thought somebody, Melinda Pierce of the United Tenants of Albany, really put it aptly with the requirement of the vacancy study. It's like requiring a study of whether somebody needs a Band-Aid while they're bleeding. So we really need to remove that undue burden, onerous task. It's not necessary and it's not helpful. We need to treat this housing crisis as a housing crisis. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Jenna Goldstein.
Hi, my name is Jenna Goldstein, and I'm the Ulster County Organizer at For the Many here in Kingston. Before I did at-large county organizing, I was focused on tenants here in Kingston, so I can say with certainty that tenants are hurting here and need legislation that protects them. I have knocked hundreds of renters' doors in Kingston, and I gotta be honest, they are scared. They are scared of losing their homes despite ETPA and GCE, because landlords have been successfully circumventing the laws by removing flyers and mail indicating ETPA designation, by intimidating them to leave, and by blatantly flouting the law. They can do this because they know tenants will be scared. They do this because they have deep pockets for lawyers. They do this because they are not being held accountable. I could stand here and tell you stories, but I only have 3 minutes, and that would likely take 3 weeks. So I'll say this. We need the REST Act to expand and protect rent stabilization. We need the Social Housing Development Authority because it is a fool's errand to rely on for-profit real estate developers to fix the housing problem. We need to remove the vacancy study because it is out of step with all other ETPA cities and is a locally adopted policy, not a law. I'm here tonight to urge this common council to show your constituents that you do care about them, that you do respect their challenges and successes, and that you will protect them through this housing crisis. Be brave and stand up to endless landlord lawsuits and threats. Show your voters, the people who you claim to represent, that you support them by passing a resolution supporting the REST Act, the Social Housing Development Authority, and reject the vacancy study. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Alexander Simmons.
Hi, my name's Alex Simmons. I live on Hemlock Avenue in Kingston. About 50% of my income goes towards rent, and for this reason, among many others, I really urge the council to support the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers resolution and to support the REST Act. I have a really difficult time seeing a future for myself, or kind of for anyone for that matter, in living in this area. And I really, really deeply believe in the attitude that I see, having lived here for a couple of years now. And I want to devote myself to protecting everyone and remediating the land. And I don't feel very confident that I could do this without the help of permanently affordable, sustainable social housing. That's all. Thank you.
Common Council, that's 30 minutes. Do I have a motion to extend? Motion by Michael Tierney, second by Drew Andrews. All in favor? Anyone opposed? We have another 30 minutes. Next speaker, please.
Laura O'Brien.
Hello, my name is Laura O'Brien. I'm a resident and renter of Kingston, New York in Ward 8. I urge the Common Council to pass resolutions in support of the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act and the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act. In my own neighborhood, I have seen the way in which homes available to renters have increased rents substantially and priced out my neighbors, then remain vacant, and then are only occupied by newcomers to Kingston with significantly larger amounts of wealth, or flip from long-term rentals to short-term rentals, such as Airbnbs. It pains me to see my neighbors be forced to leave the community they love, to be replaced by a revolving door of transient Airbnb guests that do not have a connection or sense of responsibility and accountability to our city. There are numerous vacant homes on my street. There are numerous short-term rentals on my street. Many of these are homes once occupied by my neighbors who were kind and supportive and substantially contributed to the vitality and community fabric of Kingston. I fear for my own ability to see my own rent increase substantially. I fear for my neighbors. We need to pursue every tool and opportunity available to us to ensure that Kingston residents can afford to live in their own community. I urge you to pass the PASH New York and REST Acts. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Maggie McAdam.
Hello, my name is Maggie McCadden, and I'm a Kingston resident. I live in Ward 8 specifically, and I urge the Common Council to pass resolutions in support of the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act and the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act. I have seen firsthand the impact of rising rent prices and cost of living on my friends, and specifically displacing longtime community members in Kingston. On my street, housing prices have skyrocketed, and short-term vacation rentals like Airbnbs have increased, as well as an increase in vacant homes. It should not be this expensive to live in the Hudson Valley. I want to have a community where Kingston residents can afford to both live and thrive, and I recognize that these resolutions are a crucial step to get there. We need to keep the housing Kingston already has affordable by strengthening rent stabilization and creating new, high-quality, permanently affordable homes. Please pass resolutions supporting the Pash New York and REST Acts to keep working people here in Kingston. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Sophie Howard.
Hi, my name is Sophie Howard and I live at 177 Fair Street where I'm a tenant. And I urge the Common Council to pass resolutions in support of the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act and the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act. I pay exactly 1/3 of my income in rent, a rarity today, and I live in a rent stabilized building, and my landlord followed the Rent Guidelines Board rules and reduced and then froze the rent, also a rarity based on what has been previously shared in this room during previous meetings. My landlord's following of these rules has allowed me to live in Kingston and to weather a layoff and the time it took to find a new job last year. Everyone deserves to have access to these same protections, and we know the current laws don't allow for this. Thank you for your support in enhancing rent protections with the passage of resolutions for these two bills.
Next speaker, please.
Sebastian. And you have to tell me your last name.
I always say it's Pelletier like military, but I don't like that. So, hey everyone, thank you. My name is Sebastian Pelletier. I live at 136 Jansen Avenue. Thank you to Michelle and Michael for introducing these resolutions. And I urge the Common Council to support the Permanently Affordable Housing or Social Housing for New Yorkers Act and the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act. I got pretty lucky. I got to buy a house last year. It's covered in lead paint. There's no asbestos. It's not insulated. The walls have holes in them. It has oil heat, and occasionally water leaks from the ceiling where the bathroom is. And the mortgage costs half of my income. But I feel pretty lucky. I love my street and I love Kingston. In the past year since moving in, I've had 3 friends live with me because they lost their housing or haven't been able to find any in Kingston. And in my own time here, I've moved about 7 times and had to live in an uninsulated attic for over a year, but it was affordable, so I got lucky. Housing insecurity and displacement destroy and eat away at the fabric of our community. They are forms of completely unnecessary suffering that have been created as a result of policy choices. We didn't necessarily create those conditions, but it doesn't mean we bear no responsibility for what is happening. I love my little house, but what I wanted was stability, affordability, and safety. I wanted to be able to stay in Kingston. What I really wanted was a form of social housing. We need housing for housing and not as an investment. I urge you to support the Permanently Affordable Social Housing Bill to create high-quality housing and the Rent Emergency Stabilization Act, because they would create housing that is safe, affordable, and stable. And because with that, then we can begin to create a community. And in the words of the poet of our generation, Bad Bunny, y que los míos nunca se mudan. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Tristan Shepard.
Hello, My name is Tristan Shepard. I'm a tenant at 87 3rd Avenue in Ward 8. I also work in Ulster County, an employee-owned company with 200 member owners, many who are residents of Kingston, actually. And I celebrate all the previous activity here with reactive measures for tenants like EPTA and like Good Cause. Unfortunately, I'm actually not covered by Good Cause. Excuse me. Staring down a 9% rent raise this month that I just learned about. I don't anticipate my job to cover that, reciprocally with a 9% raise, but I will figure things out. Recently, my neighbor across the street had to move due to the sale of a house, and she is a bus driver in the community sending a kid to college. And when she hit the housing market, she could only find a place that was $800 more per month. So she's also learning to live with an adjusted budget. It's pretty difficult. And also I had a lot of great opportunities to talk to people around Kingston about this bill, these two bills. And one of the more interesting situations that I found was a retired woman who wanted to sell her house, but decided not to because the rent was too high to move into a more easier to maintain unit. So I think sorry, I'm freestyling a little bit here. I'm excited about taking a more proactive measure here, which is why the permanently affordable social housing bill is so nice. In my lifetime, and I don't expect it to change too much, I don't think the free market has come up with a very credible solution for stable housing for the working class, the poor, and even very well-off people. And I'd like to see an alternative approach to it. I don't expect what we've been doing to continue to work or hasn't worked in the past. And I would love to see a situation where the Social Housing Development Authority can offer an enviable place to live, to maybe even to think that people would prefer that kind of arrangement. The 25% market cap would make it so that people in this area can afford
30
to stay here.
seconds.
And it hasn't been mentioned previously, but also a tenant board that helps run the housing itself. So, thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Lisa Flanagan.
Hi, my name is Lisa Flanagan, and I'm actually a resident of Saugerties because I couldn't afford Kingston when I moved back up to Ulster County to take care of my father. But many years ago, rent-stabilized housing kept me from homelessness. I had a good, stable corporate job. I was in insurance, the most stable word in the world, and I was starting to feel not well and taking sick days. And when I got the call from my doctor, I was at work. I walked into my boss's office and I told him that I had just been diagnosed with a condition that would take anywhere from 3 months, if I was lucky, to a year to recover from. And before I left his office, I was told I was no longer a good fit. I was young. I didn't know that was illegal. But I did have stabilized housing, and I couldn't apply to a job. I couldn't provide anything because I didn't know what I was going to be for the next year of my life. But I knew what my rent was going to be, and I knew that it was manageable, and I knew that I could ask for help, and it wasn't going to be out of reach for anyone, and that I wasn't going to have my lease expire and suddenly be what the market could bear, because what the market can bear is never what a person can bear. And landlords will always have more money, will always have a bigger voice and have a bigger seeming vested interest because they have a vested portfolio. This matters more. This matters more than them. These resolutions matter more than them. Housing matters more than them. And all the people who voted for you and all the people who don't even get to vote for you matter more. I hope you pass these resolutions. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Phil Erner.
Thanks. For the record, I live in Ward 3. Any government exists to protect the weak from the strong, right? Any government has basic duties concerning public health, welfare, and safety. It seems to me this role, one could summarize some of the basic aspects of that as planning and coordinating the feeding, housing, clothing, and education of the people, keeping clean the air, the water, and the land. Now, I know we're not used to thinking about those as duties of the cities in New York State, but we maybe need to start because we see the disintegration of the federal government. So tonight you can pass the resolution in support of the REST Act. Please do, the Social Housing Development Authority Act. You can also, at some point, deny deregulation of Stony Run and cancel the vacancy study that you don't have to do. And by the way, given the attacks on workers, for example, the mall post office in the town of Ulster is getting shut down, and the local Kingston president of the Postal Workers Union is seeking support for that because we know all the Kingston area post offices are connected, and the Kingston zip code serves more than just our city, and our city residents also work at the mall and shop at the mall and need those postal boxes. And we need a union built social housing. Okay. Public health, safety, and welfare. ICE is in town. What else will you do? What else will the city do besides tell us after the fact? Will the city actually defend our residents and our people? What does a sanctuary city mean when 10% of school attendance is down? I went to college in a city the same geographic size with 3 times the people and the same size police force as the city of Kingston. What if 2/3 of the police force laid down their firearms and their badges and grabbed plowshares and pickaxes, hoes and hammers, and got to work building housing and gardens on all the vacant land in this city? We don't have to just tell the state what to do. We can do it directly here with the labor and budget we already have. Also, I want to say a word about traffic safety. The revolution
30 seconds.
will not be motorized. The scooterer who got ticketed, how are you ticketing the person who got themselves struck by a car? You should close that chunk of Thomas Street. It doesn't need to be there open to motor vehicles. They can go around on Cornell and Sacramento. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Tanya Garment.
Hi, Tanya Garment, 19 Adams Street, Kingston. I've lived here for about 10 years. I grew up in Brooklyn. My parents were gentrifiers. I know what it is to be of the privileged populace, not knowing what you're doing when you support things like grants for facades to raise property values. But it was a city, and we met our neighbors. And when I was in my 20s, I lived in subsidized housing. And before I got into subsidized housing, my husband had been on the waiting list for 7 years. And before that, we lost our apartment because while New York City did have rent stabilization, it's only for above a certain number of units. So when the hyper gentrification began, a new landlord bought the building and raised the rent by 1/3. The thing here is that this happens all across the country. It's been happening through the 1900s. That most of the Common Council are my age or older. We've seen this happen with shifts in policy, and because of horrible policies is the primary reason that we've seen. But before that, when Kingston was actually having public housing, it was because of wars and depressions. The thing is, the running theme here is stability. Things are going to happen. There's going to be bad policies. We're going to have a terrible federal government for a while. we need to be able to have a stability, and local economics is also important. We need to be able to support the people who live in Kingston and work in Kingston, but we need to be able to welcome new people who don't make a high income. We need a local economy, and New York State is an economy that we can harness, and we must harness. We must be thinking on levels of local government in order to support what we need supported. I'm glad that we in Kingston have memorializing resolutions, because this is it's an example of an extremely important thing that will help New Yorkers across the state, municipalities across the state.
30 seconds.
And I'm so glad that this is on the agenda for Kingston to speak out in support of these housing bills on a state level, because we do really need that now, and will happen throughout our lifetimes and through our kids' lifetimes, where it's going to be emergencies, and we need stability, and we need to value people across the board, even low-income people who don't have as much of a
Thank you.
voice.
Your time is
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Chelsea Viaba.
Good evening, Council. I'm a social worker and renter, and I'm here to express my full-throated support for Resolutions 79 and 80. Thank you to the sponsors of these legislations for listening to thousands of our neighbors who have come up to this microphone for years and shared their housing challenges, struggles, fears, and pains. In this continental climate, we need housing the way we need air to breathe. No housing equals an activated survival brain equals public mental and physical health crises. The Supreme Court just made houselessness illegal. It is eugenics of the poor to make housing unaffordable, unregulated, and not cemented in policy. If you've never wondered where you might rest your head to sleep or where you can reliably use a bathroom, may you find it in your heart to understand that everyone needs safe and stable housing the way you have been afforded. At a time when this dictatorial federal administration is attacking collective bargaining rights, it's completely out of touch to say remove the word unions from this legislation. A memorialized resolution nonetheless. Please support our workers from union to minimum wage and our disabled, all of whom need housing like you and me. Regarding Resolution 80, expand tenant protections and use accurate qualitative data about people's lives. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is unwise. No more of the litigious vacancy study. You can use the human data from public comments, from your real life neighbors to inform your decisions too. People like the nurses, teachers, students, grocery store workers, and evicted single parents I've spoken with about their worst nightmare, losing housing. Additionally, please hold property holders who rent their units responsible when they commit housing violations. When poor people violate the law, we go to jail and are given high fines. When the rich, like real estate moguls, violate the law, they pay off fines to keep playing around legal loopholes. Enforce your legislation and policies and give errant landlords all the code violations they may somehow not be receiving. Do not deregulate and privatize housing like that of the Stony Run apartments that our neighbors need. Protect tenants. Pass Pashney and rest.
Next speaker, please.
Naomi Dan. Hi, good evening. My name's Naomi Dan. I live on O'Neill Street in Kingston. I'm the Chief of Staff at Housing Justice for All, which is a statewide coalition of tenant and community organizations. I'm here tonight to echo the support for social housing and rent stabilization resolutions. And there's so many people who've told their stories and the stories of their neighbors. So I'm going to be really quick, but I do want to say thank you to this council for being a statewide leader on confronting the housing crisis that's affecting every single community in our state. You have led the way on adopting rent stabilization, on adopting good cause, and fighting to keep tenants in their homes. And still, we have a housing crisis. I don't think I need to convince you of that. And you need more tools to confront it. And what we're talking about tonight is you lifting up your voices to our state legislature, to the governor, and saying municipalities like ours want to keep our residents in their homes. We want to keep our community affordable to the people who live here now and welcoming to people who might move here in the future. And we don't want people to be pushed out so that we can continue to have a diverse, in many different ways, community. And we need your help. We need the state to put real money into building housing that people can actually afford. That's not something that Kingston can do on its own. You need the state to help fund those projects at the affordability levels that residents here actually need. We need the state's help to make it make it easier to expand rent stabilization and to enforce it here in Kingston. And so the votes that you're taking tonight to pass these resolutions are really critical to making it clear to the state legislature that they need to take this action. I know memorializing resolutions might feel like, we're expressing our opinion and maybe it goes somewhere. But I do want to tell you from the advocacy that I've done in Albany that these resolutions in particular are really meaningful, because what those legislators are looking for is to see that people in their community need this and that it is supported. And so the votes that you take tonight are going to send that message really strongly. So thank you so much. Thank you to Michelle and to Michael for bringing these resolutions forward. And thanks to all of you for being housing leaders.
Next speaker, please.
And Andrew Hiller.
Next speaker.
Amber Rodriguez.
Hi, I don't think I can top what anybody else here has said. My name's Amber Rodriguez, and I currently reside on Down Street in Midtown Kingston. I'm here to urge the Common Council to pass the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act and the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act. As a lifelong resident of Ulster County, I've seen this area go through waves of economic strength and prosperity, from the IBM crash to our current post-COVID world. Excuse me. I've lived all over Ulster County, but to me, Kingston is home. I love how many different cultures and walks of life gather here. I may be biased, but I believe we have the best food, art, and music in the Hudson Valley. Unfortunately, with the cost of housing rising, fewer artists and creators are able to afford to live here. There are so many concerns, from groceries, utilities, gas, childcare, healthcare, and so many more that we have to consider. But this isn't just about artists. This is about everyone. I want everyone to feel secure enough in what they have so that they can not only survive and get by going to work and coming home, spending money on bills, but they can actually feel secure enough in their housing so that they can create art and make this city even more beautiful and bring more of their experience here. Thank you very much.
Next speaker, please.
Kaya Parmalee.
Hello, my name is Kaya Parmalee, and I live at 586 Route 213 in Rosendale, but I grew up in Kingston and much of my family still lives here, and I would love to continue to live in the area. I'm here today to call on you to pass the resolution sponsored by Alderman Hirsch and Turney in support of the REST Act, which would expand rent stabilization laws to cover more units in Kingston and make it so more upstate cities can opt into these protections, and social housing, which would build and maintain affordable and democratically controlled housing. I also call on you to pass a resolution denying the attempts to deregulate Stony Run. Finally, I call you to cancel the vacancy study scheduled for this year to prevent landlords from manipulating the data and stripping Kingston of rent stabilization protections. I think everybody deserves this basic human right, regardless of identity or ability to pay. And I really hope that you guys support this. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker, please.
Megan Chodash.
Hi, my name is Megan and I live in Rosendale. I used to live in Kingston, but I couldn't find any reasonably priced or affordable housing. I'm lucky that I was able to move close by and had a car and my employment wasn't impacted by the move. But many aren't that lucky and they can't just renew their lease and they have no housing options, which can be catastrophic, as you have heard from other community members. I just started a job at a local school and in my first week have already met more than a handful of kids who are impacted by the housing instability. Show up for them. There's a housing crisis right now, and there's actionable things that we can do for our community. Pass the resolution sponsored by Hirsch and Tierney in support of the REST Act. Pass the resolution to denying the attempts to deregulate Stony Run, and I lastly call on you to cancel the vacancy study. It really does not make sense. Thank you.
That is the 30-minute window, but that is also our last speaker. Before I ask council, is there anybody else who has not spoken that would like to? Okay, so the council motion to extend Michael Tierney, second by Sarah Pasty, all in favor? Opposed? We have another 30 minutes, so come on up. State your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is James Comedy. I live on 264 Clinton Avenue. My second time here at the Common Council. I want to start by noting there's a public health crisis involving libertarian technocrats who are disturbing the public health and safety from motor vehicles with an interest of ultimately creating corporate city-states who routinely lie about what they're doing. And I challenge everyone here to take this crisis as seriously as the housing crisis, both of which we do not need studies to prove. That being said, regarding the housing crisis, the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act will be an essential way to handle it, and not simply for the affordable rents it will be required to set for tenants, but also in the very dignified way it enfranchises the representation of tenant interest in the administration of their buildings by an elected board of administrators who are chosen directly by the tenants for 5-year terms each. This will give tenants much more of a responsive administration over their buildings, that they themselves have power, responsibility, and the means to hold to account. So I do think the democratic organization of social housing will be one of the most important accomplishments of passing the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act. And like everyone else, I implore you to pass the resolution in support of it so that our legislators in Albany from every district, Senate or Assembly know how important it is to get social housing for New Yorkers now.
Is there anybody else who has not spoken who would like to? All right, then I will close up the public speaking portion of the meeting. And what I'm going to do is move resolutions 79 and 80 to the beginning of our agenda, since that is what almost all the speakers addressed. So that way you guys can go home after that if you would like, but you're more than welcome to stay around to hear the rest of it as well. So we're now entering into claims and communications. Hearing no discussion, they will be on file in the clerk's office. Can I get a motion to dispense with the second reading of the general bills and pay same? Motion by Jeannie Edwards, second by Drew Andrews. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is adopted 8-0. We're now entering into the report of committees, starting with resolution number 79.
Resolution 79 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, calling upon the New York State Legislature to pass and the governor to sign A.6265, S.5674 in relation to creating a social housing development authority.
On the question, Alderwoman Mickens.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Memorializing Resolution 79 seeks to support the creation of a social housing development authority, which will have among its powers the ability to issue bonds at discounted rates to fund the development of diverse housing that includes home ownership and rental models. Those units financed in this way will allow for deeper affordability bands that private and/or public-private partnerships are unable to serve due to the cost of capital, lack of subsidies, and insufficient return on investment, in their opinion. So I am in favor of this memorializing resolution. However, I motion that we amend the language of the 11th and 12th whereas paragraphs. In the first instance of the 11th whereas, we will replace union-built housing with utilizing prevailing wage labor built housing for public and community ownership. And in the second instance, in the 12th whereas, we will replace union labor with utilizing prevailing wage labor and sustainable construction techniques.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Is there a second to change the Jeannie Edwards seconds it? Is there any discussion on this motion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. This is just to make this change. All in favor? Opposed? Or change is adopted 8-0. Anybody else on the actual resolution now? Alderman Tierney?
Thank you, President Schott. I introduced this resolution, this memorializing resolution, not only because I believe that social housing is the only solution to the housing crisis, but this bill sort of perfectly addresses a lot of the issues that have been circling, the issues that we're talking about here at the city level, specifically what it means to have affordable housing. So we've heard that neoliberal argument over and over again that we simply can't afford to build for poor people. And we need to build for that missing middle so that poor people can eventually maybe move up into the dregs that were left by that missing middle, moving into these houses that we're trying to build for $1,800 to $3,200 a month, depending on how much money you make. So the social housing decommodifies that necessity and puts that where it's most needed for people making low income, extremely low income, and no income. In addition, social housing promotes density, it promotes mixed use, all these things that we over the years have come to realize is important for our community. You know, we're going through a lot of major housing developments in the city of Kingston, be that Garrigan Drive, be that the Kingston Business Park. And these seem like, if this bill passes expediently, would be perfect opportunities for that. You know, not only people paying only 25% of their income to live there, but also that's a non-for-profit landlord that could also lease commercial spaces to a grocery store, which we don't have downtown or in Midtown or all across the city. So these social housing projects, which have had success all across the world and in the United States before 1975, really show that takes this huge weight off of so many people's lives, whether that's, you know, they can go back to school, they can go on a vacation, they can take their kids somewhere that they can't afford. And all of these things makes us a stronger community. And there are so many better benefits to social housing than for-profit housing, and to decommodify a necessity of life should be the goal of all of us here as a functioning government. You know, none of us were put on earth to pay our landlord. We were here to live together in harmony and building something beautiful. So I hope everybody will vote in favor of this, and I really thank everybody for coming and speaking out, and for the really important conversations that we've had in committee and in caucus about this. So thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else on the question? Alderman Steve Shabbat and then Alderwoman Michelle Hirsch.
Thank you, Madam President. Actually, I'd just like to take a brief moment here to thank everyone on the council. We went to caucus last night and there was quite a bit of discussion. And actually, to be honest, there were some opposition to this resolution. None of the opposition had anything to do with affordable housing. It had more to do with the state adding caveats to the legislation, which were not housing related. So we had the opportunity to sit and talk. We did some compromising. We come up with some solutions that, you know, I think it's going to be enough compromise here, you know, to get the support that we need for this. So again, it was nice to see everybody working on the same page to reach the same goal. So I appreciate everybody's efforts.
Thanks, Steve. Michelle?
Thank you, Madam President. I would also like to thank the council and that Community Development and Housing Committee for, you know, passing this resolution out to the floor for us to deliberate and vote on this evening. So unlike the Hudson Valley Power Authority Act, the Social Development and Housing Authority does not take over a pre-existing private business. This is a completely new, out-of-the-box development that is being created to respond to our housing crisis here in the state. I think it is really, really important that we have a model like this as our public housing across the United States, and New York has been privatized, and people at the lowest AMI levels that need the most support are people with disabilities, are senior citizens. Those apartments are quickly disappearing, and we do not have places for them to live any longer. So I am fully in support of this bill, and thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution number 80, please.
Resolution 80 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, calling upon the New York State Legislature to pass and the Governor to sign the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants, REST Act, S4659, A4877.
On the question, Alderwoman Michelle Hirsch.
Thank you, Madam President. Here in Kingston, we've been very fortunate to pass the ETPA and protect about 1,200 of our tenants. It's not been easy. We will be back in court next week at the Court of Appeals, but other communities in the state need to be able to opt into the ETPA, and they need to also be able to protect more than 10% of their tenants. So I'd like to thank Senator Kavanaugh and Assemblymember Shrestha for introducing the REST Act, which would allow, which would expand three things in the ETPA. First, it would allow municipalities to declare housing an emergency and opt into the ETPA by either doing a vacancy study or using other housing data that is available. Second, municipalities that opt in would bring buildings constructed 15 years ago into rent stabilization on a rolling basis. People should not be consigned to old housing to have affordable housing. And lastly, it would give municipalities local control over how many units in a building could be covered. So right now it is 6 or more, and this act would allow communities to pick the number of units, sort of like we did in the good cause eviction, because even in here in Kingston, 60% of our housing units are in buildings that are 1 to 4 units. So I thank my council members, my colleagues here for entertaining this, discussing it, and voting it out of committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the question? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. We're going to move back to resolution 69. Famous last words. I can't imagine that we're going to be much longer, but if you would like to leave, just please do so quietly because it's very echoey in the stairways. Thank you. Resolution number 69, please.
Resolution 69 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for 2024 budget transfer in the amount of $22,563 in the Department of Public Works from insurance recovery funds to various operating accounts.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution number 70, please.
Resolution 70 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for a 2025 budget transfer in the city clerk's office in the amount of $3,885 from contingency to replace the microphones in council chambers.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution 71, please.
Resolution 71 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement and any and all related documents with New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, and to expend funds in the first instance for the Forsyth Barn reconstruction with restrooms project.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution 72, please.
Resolution 72 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, authorizing the mayor to expend funds in the first instance related to the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation Environmental Protection Fund grant awarded for the skate park project.
On the question, Alderwoman Michelle Hirsch.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just like to say that it's really great to see the skate park moving forward. This is something that we have been talking about for about 5 years. So I know it would be a great thing for our kids to have. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution 73, please.
Resolution 73 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, authorizing a budget transfer in the Parks and Recreation Department in the amount of $27,844.44 to reconcile accounts.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 74, please.
Resolution 74 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, authorizing a budget transfer in the Building Safety Department in the amount of $1,460.47 to reconcile accounts.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution 75, please.
Resolution 75 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, authorizing a budget transfer in the Engineering Department in the amount of $149.95 to reconcile accounts.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution 76, please.
Resolution 76 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, amending the parking section of the fee schedule to include overnight parking in city parks violations.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution 77, please.
Resolution 77 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, adopting the standard workdays for elected and appointed officials in the New York State retirement system.
On the question, Alderwoman Michelle Hirsch.
I will be recusing myself.
You don't need to.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anybody else? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Thanks, though, for being considerate of that. Moving to resolution 78, please.
Resolution 78 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, amending the Housing Initiative section of the fee schedule to include the purchase of properties in REM, tax lien foreclosure process, and the purchase of abandoned properties acquired through the 19-A process.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving now to Resolution 81, please.
Resolution 81 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, authorizing the mayor to execute a lease renewal for the bulkhead under Judge Lauren Bridge.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution number 82, please.
Resolution 82 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, declaring itself as lead agency and making a negative declaration on the short environmental assessment for the Kingston Point Park.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution 83, please.
Resolution 83 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, editing a policy for disposition of surplus city-owned property.
On the question, Alderwoman Michelle Hirsch.
Yes, Madam President. I'd like to say that this disposition policy is being updated so that we can also address abandoned dwellings under Article 19A of the New York Real Property Tax Law. And I would also like to thank everyone for agreeing that the Common Council Finance Committee will now serve as the review committee for any properties that the Land Bank passes on and that we would be putting out for an RFP. Thank you.
Yes, and just a clarification point from last night, we did make that change in the policy to reflect the intent of the committee report. Anyone else on the question? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution number 84, please.
Resolution 84 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, amending Resolution 68 of 2025 regarding the Foxhall Flatbush project to remedy a drafting error.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. We're now moving to the second reading and therefore vote of local law number 2.
Local Law 2 of 2025 of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, amending Chapter 310, Parks and Recreation.
On the question, hearing Alderwoman Michelle Hirsch.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to thank Alderwoman Sarah Pasty for all her work on this new local law regarding parking in the parks. I know it took a lot of going back and forth and a couple of different committees, and I think you did a really great job. So thank you.
I agree with that too. Anyone else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Local Law 2 passes 8-0. Moving to the second reading and therefore votes to Local Law number 3.
Local Law 3 of 2025 of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, amending the administrative code authorizing the deputy comptroller to act generally for and in place of their principal officer, or in the absence or inability of the principal to act, and the comptroller shall have the power and authority to appoint officers and employees therein.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Local Law 3 passes 8-0. That concludes our communications, but before we conclude our council meeting, does anyone have anyone to close in memory of tonight? No? I know, I always look to Steve. He keeps good track. That's good news. That is very good news. So then I will hear a motion to adjourn. Motion by Jeannie Edwards, second by Terrell Mickens. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Then we hereby stand adjourned until the next regularly scheduled meeting on Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025 at 7:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone.